I think it's fair to say that we, collectively as a society, have all tried our very best to forget the COVID-19 pandemic. As great as it was not to have to put on pants every day, being locked down wasn't really a lot of fun. And neither was WWE Television, which was one of the only live sports or entertainment groups to forge ahead pretty much as scheduled. To say that things got strange, very strange, is a massive understatement. I'm Adam Pachisi from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are 10 pandemic-era WWE moments you already forgot about. Join us. Number 10, 316 Day. It didn't take us long to find out what sort of wild ride lockdown-era WWE would take us on now, did it? Hell, the weirdness began with the very first episode of Raw from an empty WWE Performance Center, the March 16th, 2020 edition of the flagship show. Ah yes, the 16th day of the third month, 316 Day, the perfect day for an appearance from a certain Texas rattlesnake. Old Stone Cold himself showed up on Raw despite there being nobody there. I mean, he couldn't just stay at home now, could he? Not when he could be twatting about with Becky Lynch and Byron Saxton in an utterly pointless segment that had no real reason for existing other than to fill up airtime. You know what? Fair play to everyone involved for going out there in the knowledge that what they were about to do was no doubt going to suck. And hey, fair play to Byron too for taking a stiff kick straight to his Saxtons before the inevitable stunner. An appearance by Steve Austin is usually something special and worth savouring as they become even rarer, but this was a whole load of nothing and has rightly been forgotten about. Number 9, the Janitor always RKOs twice. Randy Orton certainly was on one during the pandemic, wasn't he? The Viper became arguably WWE's top heel during that time, routinely doing the sort of villainous deeds that harkened back to the days of 2009 when he was an absolute menace to anyone who he came in contact with. In the summer of 2020, Randy reverted to his legend killer ways by going after a group of current and no doubt future Hall of Famers. And on the September 28th episode of Raw, Orton, disguised as a janitor, because why wouldn't he be, infiltrated the Legends Lounge backstage. Turning out the lights and donning a pair of night vision goggles, Orton took out Shawn Michaels, Ric Flair, Big Show, and Christian, who were just trying to enjoy a friendly game of poker with a steel chair. Fans didn't see the massacre unfold, but when Randy put the lights back on, they witnessed the aftermath. In any other era, one man brutally laying waste to 4 former world champions in such a seemingly brutal manner would have been talked about ad nauseum, but this was just par for the course for the time and the usual rules didn't necessarily apply. Number 8, Karaoke Showdown. It really didn't take WWE long to lose their creative minds during the pandemic, and by July we were already having karaoke contests on SmackDown. Hosted by Jey Uso, the Karaoke Showdown from the July 10th, 2020 episode saw Lacey Evans, Dana Brooke, Tamina and Naomi do their best renditions of some famous WWE themes. Oh, and their best was the absolute worst. Now, I'm not suggesting that executive producer Bruce Pritchard was heavily involved in mapping the segment out, but 3 of the songs were Jeff Jarrett's With My Baby Tonight, the Honky Tonk Man's theme, and Common Man, which played Dusty Rhodes down to the ring. So, what I am saying is that Big Brucey P's greasy fingerprints were almost certainly all over the Karaoke Showdown, which was an unwanted throwback to the days of when WWE's female performers were referred to as divas, or like something out of NXT The Game Show. Had there been a live crowd beyond the smattering of employees spaced out behind the plexiglass, I reckon this dreck would have been booed out of the building. As it is, fans decided to just erase the memory of it instead. Number 7, Child's Play. Fans of amateur dramatics and spooky bollocks got more than their fill during the pandemic, thanks in large part to the Alexa's Playground segments on Monday Night Raw. The brainchild of Triple H, Alexa's Playground was an offshoot of Bray Wyatt's Firefly Funhouse. It saw Alexa Bliss, dressed like a grumpy little emo, sitting on a swing while talking to her doll Lily, and often other WWE stars who decided to stop by. On June 7th, 2021, Shayna Baszler stopped by and ended up getting into a scuffle with Bliss, who freaked the former NXT Women's Champion out by controlling the pyro with her mind. Naturally. Later on, Shayna, a legit badass ex-MMA fighter lest we forget, was shown running from Lily backstage, barricading herself in a room when, shock horror, the doll appeared in the reflection of a mirror, causing Baszler to lose her marbles and kick the thing in before giving her best bad 80s horror movie scream. Listen, I like bad 80s horror movies and I like professional wrestling sometimes, but I didn't like this and I'm almost sorry for reminding you about it. Almost, but not quite. At the end of the day, I'm still a bit of a wanker. Number 6, Ninjas. At Backlash 2020, Akira Tozawa debuted a new gimmick. He was a ninja now, for reasons. And again, not to throw Bruce Pritchard under the bus or anything, but this was literally his first week back in a top creative spot, and well, the shoe fits, doesn't it? The former Cruiserweight champion had his own gang of ninjas, including a giant ninja portrayed by Omos, and typically soon found himself feuding with perennial 24/7 champion R-Truth. This led to a scene on the September 21st edition of Raw where Tozawa attempted to ambush Truth at the beach, hiding in the water in order to launch his surprise attack. However, Truth, who was accompanied by the invisible little Jimmy, spotted a shark and ran back to the beach, leaving his title belt behind. Tozawa, meanwhile, heard cries of shark and opted to swim away from the shore. Truth returned later with some scuba gear and, though he bottled a supposed showdown with the deep-sea predator, lucked out when the title belt washed up into his arms, as too did the tattered remnants of what looked like Tozawa's gi. Despite Truth's cries of Tozawa being devoured, that turned out not to be the case, although being involved in skits like this is a type of death, I suppose. Number 5, Gilberg. Considering the gimmick started off as a one-note way to take the piss out of WCW's Goldberg during the Monday Night Wars, Dwayne Gill has done very well out of Gilberg. After being featured during the Attitude Era, Gilberg has been brought back on numerous occasions, including by The Rock in 2003, for a Battle Royal in 2007, and for the Festival of Friendship in 2017. Just a few months after suffering a heart attack, Dwayne Gill was once again called into action by WWE in January of 2021. John Morrison and The Miz were hosting the Dirt Sheet when they called out Goldberg, who was set to clash with WWE champion Drew McIntyre at the upcoming Royal Rumble pay-per-view. Goldberg was, of course, Gilberg, while McIntyre was portrayed by a fat bloke in a kilt. The point of the segment, if there was one, was that The Miz would cash in his Money in the Bank contract at the Rumble, so The Man and the Scottish Warrior would both be losers. Truth is, though, we are all losers for having to sit through segments like this one. Number 4, Brendan Vink. Alright, not so much a moment, but an actual human man here. A human man who created moments. Deeply unmemorable moments. Having spent a year doing NXT live events, Brendan Vink received his main roster call-up and made his debut on the March 23rd, 2020 episode of Raw. Tagging with fellow Aussie Shane Thorne, Vink was not victorious as the team fell to the Street Profits. Second time's the charm though, right? Nope, 2 weeks later, Vink lost to Humberto Carrillo. No, wait, they say third time's the charm, don't they? Well, nope. 2 weeks after that, Vink and Thorne jobbed to Cedric Alexander and Ricochet. A week later, Vink and Thorne hooked up with MVP and scored an elusive win in a rematch with Alexander and Ricochet. However, 2 weeks later, they teamed up with their new manager to once again lose in what would be the team's and Vink's final main roster appearance. Despite reports that Vink was in line for a major push, he was sent back to NXT, where he would eventually find some degree of success as Chase U member Duke Hudson. Number 3, getting the band back together. The COVID-19 pandemic was not just a nightmare to navigate as far as day-to-day life was concerned, but it spelled disaster for many who were either furloughed or fired as a result of businesses shutting down. WWE didn't shut down, as we all know, but they did look to offset some of their financial losses by letting go a large chunk of their roster across several rounds of cuts. Heath Slater was one of those who was wished well in his future endeavours during the first round of cuts in April 2020, but it didn't take long for him to come back. Not on a full-time basis, mind, but for a one-off match-cum angle on the July 6th episode of Raw. Slater, wearing a t-shirt that said free agent on the front, came out during the opening segment between his old 3MB teammate Drew McIntyre and Dolph Ziggler. He lambasted and then attacked the WWE champion for not helping him get his job back, before doing the job after a Claymore in a 30-second squash. Dolph then attacked Heath, who was saved by Drew, with McIntyre and Slater embracing to bring closure to that particular chapter of their careers. Number 2, a tale of two fiends. One drawback of the pandemic is that Vince McMahon, looking very much like the spitting image puppet version of himself, was all over WWE TV. As WWE's supreme leader in a time of uncertainty, he probably felt compelled to lead by example and muck in with the rest of the roster. Fans will probably remember him teaching Gronk to jump off a platform at WrestleMania 36 and AJ Styles and Daniel Bryan fighting in his Titan Tower office during that bizarre Money in the Bank match, but they might not remember him coming face to face with The Fiend. On the SummerSlam Go Home edition of SmackDown, McMahon was introducing the Thunderdome and hyping up the pay-per-view when he was interrupted by Bray Wyatt's alter ego. The two faced off for a moment, but before The Fiend could dismember the monster, talking about Vince here just to be clear, Braun Strowman interrupted and the chairman was able to get out of dodge. It was an interesting tease and the only time Bray and McMahon shared the screen during the Eater of Worlds WWE career. Well, kinda. Number 1, the WWE debut of Joseph Parks. A global pandemic was certainly not the time to be hiring and introducing a bunch of new talent. And as we have previously noted, WWE actually did the opposite and let a significant portion of their workforce go. The WWE family, everyone. One talent who did make his on-screen WWE debut was a man who had been working behind the scenes for the previous year and a half or so. Chris Parks, aka Joseph Parks, aka former TNA star Abyss, signed with WWE as a producer in January 2019. On the August 14th, 2020 edition of SmackDown, Parks made his WWE debut as Joseph Parks in segments with old foe AJ Styles. Parks played the role of a statistician as part of the Phenomenal Intercontinental Statistics System, or PISS. Very much a cameo for a cameo's sake, Parks didn't do much of anything besides clap for Styles as Michael Cole wondered what he was doing in the ring in the first place. It wasn't the last time we would see the former Abyss, however, as he cropped up a week later to get scolded by a ranting AJ after the Phenomenal One had dropped the IC title to Jeff Hardy. Now there's a man who knows about piss.